Namaskar, this is Firstpost and you're watching Vantage with me, Palki Sharma. Day 19 of the war, Iran's own gas field has been struck. It has launched revenge attacks after the killing of its security chief. It has dropped cluster bombs on Israel and is firing ballistic missiles on the UAE. It is also easing the choke on the Strait of Hormuz. But despite the escalation, the losses and the deaths of top leaders, the Iranian regime is standing because it was designed for a war like this. Tonight, we look at Iran's strategy of mosaic defense. Also, what are the bunker buster bombs that the Americans are firing? What are Trump's options now that his allies have refused to join the war and Iran is still standing? Why is Bitcoin rising when all other assets are falling? And what is Ukraine doing in the West Asia war? In other news, relief for Indian air travelers. India has tightened rules for airlines, no extra charges on 60% of the seats. And democracy North Korea style, Kim Jong-un has won 99.93% of the vote. All this and more lined up, the headlines first. Afghanistan's Taliban government vows to avenge the deadly Kabul bombing, but they have left the door open for talks to end the conflict. A mass funeral was held for some of the hundreds of victims of a Pakistani strike on a Kabul drug treatment center on Monday. Philippine President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. puts the brakes on a public transportation fare hike announced just a day earlier. Instead, he promised the country's commuters free rides. The Philippines imports nearly all of its crude oil from West Asia. The archipelago nation has been battling massive price increases due to the Iran war. China blasts Australia and New Zealand for quote-unquote colonial-style arrogance. The outburst follows Canberra and Wellington, raising concerns over Beijing's human rights record. The two countries have also condemned China's activities in the disputed South China Sea. Nigerian President Bola Tinubu receives a ceremonial welcome in the UK. This is the first state visit to Britain by a Nigerian head of state in nearly 4 decades. The two countries are major partners in trade and defense. London is also home to a massive Nigerian diaspora. And Senegal calls for an independent international investigation. This comes after the Confederation of African Football stripped the country of its Cup of Nations title. It has now been awarded to Morocco. In January, several Senegalese players had walked off the pitch in protest over a penalty. It's day 19 of the West Asia war. Overnight, the Iranian regime confirmed a significant loss. Their security chief Ali Larijani is dead. Yesterday, Israel claimed to have killed him. Overnight, Iran confirmed his death. And Larijani was a very important figure. You could call him the de facto leader of Iran. Yet, his death did not trigger a meltdown. It triggered an escalation. Iran has launched what they're calling revenge attacks on Israeli cities. They used cluster bombs in these latest airstrikes. Now, as the name suggests, these are not single projectiles. They explode into multiple bomblets or clusters. Take a look. These bomblets targeted Tel Aviv. Some of them destroyed cars and buildings in central Israel. And just to be clear, cluster bombs are banned in international law. Yet Iran is firing them at Israel. These smaller bomblets cause wider damage to enemy locations. They can also exhaust air defense systems. Of course, nobody seems to care about international law anymore. Recently, the US sold cluster munitions to Ukraine, and now Iran is using them against Israel. It's basically no holds barred. Reports say Iran and Hezbollah are coordinating their response. The Hezbollah is firing around 100 rockets per day. These rockets are reaching Israel around the same time as Iran's missiles. The idea is to overwhelm the air defenses. And Israel knows this. They're expanding their operations in Lebanon. On the ground, Israeli soldiers and tanks are pushing on. They're taking over parts of southern Lebanon. And in the air, the bombing continues. Israel hit a building in the heart of Beirut, that too without any warning or evacuation orders. The Lebanon campaign is proving to be brutal. More than 900 people have been killed so far. Among them, 111 are children. Israel is asking people in southern Lebanon to evacuate. Their end goal is to create a buffer zone. Over in the Gulf, more interceptions were reported today. Iran fired 13 ballistic missiles at the UAE. Qatar, Kuwait and Saudi Arabia also reported missiles and drones. The Iraqi city of Erbil also reported drone hits. On the other side, the strikes on Iran are widening. We are seeing a new set of targets being hit. Gas and oil facilities, top regime leaders, and even nuclear sites. A projectile struck the vicinity of Iran's Bushehr nuclear plant. No damage or casualties have been reported, but the strike itself is worrying. Bushehr is located along the Gulf coast. It is operated by Russian officials using Russian uranium. If this becomes a pattern, it is a cause of worry. Same with the energy strikes. Iran claims the US and Israel hit a giant energy facility in the Gulf. It is called South Pars. It's the largest natural gas field in the world. Both Iran and Qatar share this facility. They produce around 730 million cubic meters of gas, which is why this strike is worrying. So far, Israel and the US had not hit Iran's major energy sites. The idea was to keep oil prices in check, energy prices in check. If that policy has changed, it means two things. One, the US and Israel are escalating. And two, energy prices will rise further. Of course, Iran is threatening to hit back. They have promised to strike Gulf refineries in the coming hours. In fact, they have issued specific evacuation orders. Samref refinery in Saudi Arabia, Jubail petrochemical complex also in Saudi, Al Hosn gas field in the UAE, Masaid petrochemical complex in Qatar, and Ras Laffan refinery also in Qatar. Iran says all 5 of these facilities will soon be hit. And this is a dilemma for Donald Trump. He does not want a bigger energy crisis. He wants to give the impression of a limited operation. Basically, he wants it both ways.
We have to put out this cancer. It's a cancer. We had to take that operation, and we did, and it was very successful. And it continues. Frankly, as somebody said, they could leave today, and it would take 10 years to rebuild the damage that's been done. But we're not ready to leave yet. But we'll be leaving in the near future. We'll be leaving in pretty much the very near future. But right now, they've been decimated from every standpoint. And again, we've had great support from countries in the Middle East, great support.
The messaging is all over the place. Trump says Iran's military has been decimated. He says it will take them 10 years to rebuild from the damage. He also says he will wrap up the war soon. Then why the escalation? Why target regime leaders, nuclear sites and gas fields? That part is not clear yet. Trump has set vague but ambitious objectives for this war, but he wants to sell it as a minor operation. Like I said, he wants it both ways. Meanwhile, his own intelligence is undercutting his claims. Trump says Iran was rebuilding its nuclear program, but today his intelligence chief, Tulsi Gabbard, briefed the US Congress. In her written testimony, she has said the very opposite. Tulsi Gabbard's report said that Iran did not try to rebuild its enrichment capabilities. That was the written submission. But in her oral address, she omitted that part. Listen to this.
Even in your printed testimony today on page 6, and your last paragraph on page 6, as a result of Operation Midnight Hammer, Iran's nuclear enrichment program was obliterated. There's been no efforts to try to rebuild their enrichment capability. You omitted that paragraph from your oral opening. Was that because the president had said there was an imminent threat 2 weeks?
No, sir, I recognize that the time was running long, and I skipped through some of the portions
So you chose to take
my oral delivered remarks.
You chose to omit the parts that contradict the president.
This puts Trump in a difficult spot. The public is against the war. The intelligence is against the war. So the ball is now in the president's court. Does he want to keep climbing the escalation ladder, or does he want an off-ramp? So it's been a brutal 48 hours for Iran. They've lost some of their most powerful men, like Basij commander Gholam Raza Soleimani. He was killed in an Israeli strike. Also Ismail Khatib, who was Iran's intelligence minister. But the biggest blow was this one, the death of Ali Larijani, Iran's top security chief and one of the most powerful men in the system. When you look at the list, one thing becomes evident. It's not about hitting big targets. It's a strategy to decapitate Iran's leadership, to shake the regime from the top down. And Israel says its next target is Mojtaba Khamenei, the new supreme leader of Iran.
As for Mojtaba Khamenei, his status is unknown. We don't see him and we don't hear him, but I can tell you one thing. We will continue, as we have proven, to pursue anyone who poses a threat to the state of Israel or raises a hand against it. No one is immune. We will track him down, find him, and neutralize him.
But here's the plot twist. Despite losing top commanders, despite losing decision makers, despite strike after strike, the Iranian regime is still standing. So what's really going on here? Is Iran on the edge of collapse? Or was it designed to survive exactly this kind of war? Let's rewind back to February 28th. US-Israeli strikes killed Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. They also killed some 40 generals and leaders. They eliminated senior figures in Iran's nuclear command. Basically, they shattered Tehran's leadership. In most countries, this would lead to a total collapse. You cut off the head and the rest falls. That's how modern warfare is supposed to work. But Iran did not collapse. It fought back. In the days that followed, it lost more leaders. On March 3rd, the new defense minister was killed, and he was killed within a day of his appointment. On March 8th, top IRGC officials were taken out. On March 12th, the missile unit commander was killed. On March 17th, Ali Larijani and the Basij commander were killed. And today, the intelligence minister, Khatib, he's been killed. How many leaders do you have to kill for a regime to fall? Because right now, Iran's top player has been all but erased. And yet, the regime is standing. It is standing because Iran was built for this. It has planned for this scenario for decades. Iran follows what it calls the mosaic defense model. It may sound complicated, but it's actually very simple. Think of it like this. Most countries are like building blocks. If you remove the base, if you remove the top leadership, everything collapses. Iran is more like a spider web. You hit one node and the web shakes, but it does not break. This model was adopted by the IRGC in the late 2000s. IRGC, as you would know, is the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, the army whose job is to defend the regime. They introduced this structure. Their commander at the time was Muhammad Ali Jafri, and he implemented it. The inspiration came from regional conflicts, especially the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. And the turning point was the collapse of Saddam Hussein. With his death, with Saddam's death, his country unraveled. Iran wanted to avoid a similar fate, so they started working on a new structure. So what is this mosaic defense? It's a military doctrine built on one harsh assumption. In a real war, you will take hits. Your top commanders will be killed, your bases will be destroyed, your communications will go dark, and even your central control could collapse. What do you do then? How do you prevent that? Iran broke its military into multiple layers, semi-independent, regional, self-sufficient groups. There is no single point of failure, no single head to cut off. Under this system, there are many pieces. The IRGC, the Besiege Force, the army, the missile units, the naval forces, they all function like pieces of a mosaic. If one piece is shattered, the rest still hold. If leaders are killed, the system does not freeze. If communications are cut, units do not wait. They already know what to do next. Because this doctrine has one core goal: make Iran impossible to paralyze and exhaust the enemy with a long war. And that is the real story here. Yes, Israel strikes are hitting hard. They're taking out key figures. They're disrupting the chain of command. But they're not breaking the system. It's not something the Americans accounted for. And now they're grappling with a big question. If you can't break the system from the top, then how do you end the war at all? This war is costing investors dearly. Since it began, Indian indices have lost nearly 8%. They saw some relief today, a 1% recovery, but it's only a fraction of what they've lost. There's only one asset which has remained steady throughout, and that is Bitcoin. It has outperformed almost everything else. The S&P 500, the Nasdaq, even gold. Bitcoin is doing better than all of them. Since the war began, Bitcoin has gained 14%. So what explains this trend? Let's look at the current status. Bitcoin is trading at around $72,000. And like I said, it's rising when everything is falling. This may seem counterintuitive, because when there is fear, people run away from risky assets like Bitcoin. They turn towards safe assets like gold, and yet Bitcoin is beating gold. So who is buying Bitcoin? Mostly large corporations and investment funds. And they're not buying all at once. They're buying gradually, as and when they feel the price is ideal. And they're doing it through something called ETFs. ETFs are exchange-traded funds. They're like a pool of money. Think of it as a mutual fund, but for cryptocurrency. Cryptocurrency, or crypto, is digital money, and Bitcoin is the oldest and largest of them all. The ETF is managed by financial experts. This pool of money, the exchange-traded fund, is managed by financial experts. Investors put money in. The fund buys the underlying asset, in this case Bitcoin. The investor never holds the actual coin. They simply own a share of the fund. And right now, there is a lot of this buying activity going on. This month, some $1.5 billion has been poured in. So that's one of the factors. The other factor, interestingly, is Iran. Iran has been playing in the crypto market, although the volumes are small. When the war began, crypto activity in Iran spiked. There was an increase in crypto outflows. Let me share one estimate with you. $2.3 million moved out of Iran's crypto exchanges. The largest crypto exchange in Iran is called Nobitex. It has more than 11 million users. In this one exchange alone, there was a 700% spike in outflows. Again, this was money leaving the exchange immediately after the first strikes. And where did the money go? Well, there are all kinds of reports doing the rounds. Some say the money was taken to overseas platforms. Others say it shifted to other domestic exchanges. Going by one report, a significant portion went to unidentified wallets. These are digital addresses with no traceable owner. Experts believe two kinds of traders were active here: the ordinary citizens of Iran and Iran's state-linked entities. They were moving the funds through assets like Bitcoin. Now, this may sound extraordinary for a country like Iran, but it's a serious player in the cryptocurrency space. Tehran has built an entire crypto ecosystem out of necessity. It has been under American sanctions for decades. It is cut off from the global banking system. It cannot access the US dollar, which is the reserve currency of the world. And this makes it nearly impossible for Iran to move money across borders. For ordinary Iranians, this has made financial life extremely difficult. For the Iranian state, it has made doing business with the world almost impossible. So Iran built a workaround. In 2019, the government legalized industrial crypto mining. Licensed facilities were brought under official oversight. Iran built up a parallel financial system, one that could escape Western sanctions. By 2025, Iran's cryptocurrency market had grown to nearly $7.8 billion. Some estimates say the value is much higher. It is touching $10 billion according to them. And who owns all this cryptocurrency? One dominant player is the IRGC, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, the guardian of Iran's regime. Reports say last year the IRGC moved some $3 billion through digital assets like Bitcoin. Iran's central bank has also been accumulating cryptocurrency. It has bought over $500 million worth of digital assets. So it's not just Wall Street that's buying Bitcoin. Even countries like Iran, which remain cut off from the global financial system, are doing it. The only difference is that investors elsewhere want to just make money, and Iran wants to stay afloat. I guess that's the story of Bitcoin in 2026, an asset for investors and a lifeline for a regime under siege. Is Benjamin Netanyahu dead? Social media can't seem to get over this question. It started with some rumors. He tried to quell them by posting videos to show that he's alive, but that only made things worse. And now there are full-blown images to prove that he is dead. Images showing the Israeli Prime Minister lying in a pool of blood. It's shocking. It's also completely fake. These are AI-generated images. If you look closely, you can tell the details do not add up, the textures are off, the face looks distorted. But in the heat of a war, people don't stop to zoom in. They just share. And that's how misinformation spreads. Even prime ministers cannot escape this. They must constantly offer proof of life. And it's not just about Netanyahu or his images, it's a pattern. Fake attack videos, fake death claims, leaders being declared dead when they're very much alive. So every day we try to break down what's real and what's fake. We also show you the most important verified videos from the war. Today's video number 1 is from Iran. Like I told you, Israeli strikes have killed top Iranian officials like Ali Larijani and Ismail Khatib. Today their funerals took place in Tehran. There were thousands of people in attendance. Mourners hugged the coffins, they waved Iranian flags, and some were even seen crying.
مبادا دلهایتان بلرزد امروز که حضور حماسی شما در روز
Video number 2 is also from Tehran. This one shows a strike. The Israeli Defense Forces or IDF say it's a drone attack, a strike targeting Basij operatives at a checkpoint. The Basij is a paramilitary volunteer militia in Iran. It serves as a domestic security force of the IRGC. These operatives are targeted by Israel. You can see a busy road and then an explosion. It was followed by thick smoke rising into the sky. Israel claims this was part of a much larger operation to target Basij and IRGC command centers. Our next video is from Israel, and this one comes with a twist. This is a video released by Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu himself. In it, he confirms the death of Ali Larijani, but again, that's not what the internet focused on. Instead, people zoomed into the background and found a toy, a Bugs Bunny dressed as Superman. Yes, that's what's gone viral. And this has a backstory. Netanyahu has used this toy before. He took it during court appearances. It was a present to Netanyahu's son from a billionaire called Arnon Milchan. Prosecutors have tried to use this toy to show Netanyahu's ties to him. And so the Israeli Prime Minister uses it to ridicule such claims.
This morning we eliminated Ali Larijani, the boss of the Revolutionary Guards, which is a gang of gangsters actually running Iran.
Video number 4 is from Turkey. This is the Iranian women's national football team. They were playing at the Women's Asian Cup when 7 members made a bold decision. They refused to sing the national anthem. Back home, they were branded traitors, and soon after, they sought asylum in Australia. But now the story has changed. The team has returned to Iran, and several players have withdrawn their asylum requests. Why the sudden U-turn? Well, rights groups say that this may not have been a free choice. They say that Iran pressured these athletes abroad by targeting their families back home. Video number 5 is from Azerbaijan, and this one is not about strikes, it's about aid. Footage shows trucks being loaded, food, medicines, even festive packages, all headed for Iran. Azerbaijan has sent 82 tons of humanitarian supplies. As the war continues to take a human toll, officials say this is support for civilians caught in the conflict. And for our final video of the day, video number 6 takes us to Singapore. Look at these visuals. Long queues, bumper-to-bumper traffic at petrol stations across the city-state. Drivers are rushing to fill up before prices go even higher. This is panic buying triggered by a war that is being fought thousands of kilometers away. Fuel prices in Singapore are already hitting record levels this month, and at this rate, it would only get worse. That's all that we have for you today, and we'll wrap with our daily appeal. Verify before you share. Do not fall for fake news, images and videos, and do not miss what's real. Let's turn to the Strait of Hormuz now. You may not know the name of the street that you live in, but chances are you now know this strait. It carries nearly 20% of the global energy supplies, and right now Iran has blockaded it. Traffic through this waterway has dropped by 95% since the war started. It has rocketed oil prices to over $100 per barrel. But is there a de-escalation on the cards? Is Iran relaxing the Hormuz choke? Look at the recent data. Around 8 ships were crossing the strait on Monday. That's 8 non-Iranian ships. It's nearly double from the week before. So Iran does seem to be relaxing the Hormuz choke. But it's not a blanket move, it's more of a checkpoint system. Ships from friendly nations are being flagged through, like India, China, Pakistan and Turkey, but ships linked to the West and Israel are staying away because they will be targeted. And the thinking is clear. Iran does not want to antagonize its partners. It needs all the support it can get from them. At the same time, even a partial blockade gives Iran leverage. Just look at the oil prices. Before the war, one barrel cost $72. Today, it costs $107. That's nearly 45% up in 19 days. It's the highest level since July 2022. And remember, this is a partial shutdown. It's an equation that benefits the Iranian regime right now. Their own oil exports are going strong. Despite the war, Iran is shipping nearly 1 million barrels per day. If you add the elevated prices, Iran is making good money. But what if the war escalates further? What if the US and Israel destroy Iran's energy sites? What if Iran hits back at Gulf oil refineries? Well, then all bets are off. A worst case scenario could be a spike in oil prices above $200. The US is hoping to avoid that. Donald Trump tried to create a naval coalition. He asked other countries to escort ships through the Hormuz Strait. All he got was rejection.
We are not party to the conflict, and therefore, France will never take part in operations to open or liberate the Strait of Hormuz in the current context.
We are ready to ensure safe passage through the Straits of Hormuz diplomatically. However, there will be no military participation.
Needless to say, Trump is not happy with this. He said that NATO was making a huge mistake. He also took the opportunity to mock UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer.
You see that man right there? You know who that is?
Churchill.
Winston Churchill. The late, great Winston Churchill. And Barack Hussein Obama did not want his bust in this office. Did you know that? And Barack Hussein Obama sent that bust back to England. They didn't want it. And when I came in, I was asked if I wanted it. I said, absolutely, I want it. And I put it right there, Winston Churchill. And, you know, unfortunately, Keir is not Winston Churchill. I think NATO's making a very foolish mistake. And I've long said that, you know, I wonder whether or not NATO would ever be there for us. So this was a great test, because we don't need them, but they should have been there.
So the escort is not happening, but Trump is trying to spin the setback. Look at his latest message on social media. This is what he said, and I'm quoting, "I wonder what would happen if we finished off what's left of the Iranian terror state and let the countries that use it, we don't, be responsible for the so-called Strait. That would get some of our non-responsive allies in gear and fast." Well, there's a lot to unpack there. For starters, Trump has spelled Strait wrong. For some reason, he's also put the word in quotes. But here's a bigger question. Why is anyone having to secure the Strait of Hormuz? Until the 28th of February, the strait was open. More than 100 ships were transiting every day, no attacks, no disruptions. The whole problem was created by Trump's war on Iran. Everyone knew that the regime would shut the strait, but apparently Donald Trump downplayed it. Look at these reports in American media. Trump thought that Iran would surrender before they could even close the strait. He also said the US military could prevent it from happening. Those assumptions, of course, fell apart. The regime shut off the strait when the fighting started, and the US Navy could only stand by and watch. Even now, American warships are not approaching the Strait of Hormuz. They're staying away near the Gulf of Oman. So to recap, first, Trump thought the strait would not be closed. He was wrong. Then he asked others to escort tankers. They refused. And now he's hoping to destroy Iran's capability to block the strait. Again, that's easier said than done. Iran has hundreds of high-speed boats packed with explosives. They have thousands of Shahid drones left, not to mention the sea mines. If Iran mines the strait, nothing can sail through. So when it comes to the Hormuz, Iran holds all the cards, because these cards were dealt by geography. Iran holds the entire northern coast of the Strait of Hormuz. At its narrowest, the strait is just 33 kilometers wide. You don't need an armada to block it. You just need some crude boats and a few drones. As the war continues to escalate, the US has deployed one of its most powerful weapons to strike Iran, the bunker buster bomb. Unlike conventional bombs, it does not explode on impact. It is designed to penetrate deep underground, break through layers of earth and concrete, and then detonate. Washington used these bombs yesterday to strike Iranian missile sites in the Strait of Hormuz. The US says these sites were threatening global shipping. And this is not the first time they've used these bombs. Last year, too, the US dropped bunker buster bombs to strike Iran's nuclear facilities. Our next report has more.
Flashes light up the waters of the Strait of Hormuz, not from passing ships, but from bombs designed to go underground. On day 19 of the war, the United States has used one of its most powerful weapons again, the bunker buster bombs. American forces dropped multiple deep penetrator munitions on Iranian missile sites along the coastline. These sites housed anti-ship cruise missiles, weapons that the U.S. says were threatening global shipping, and that threat is real. The Strait of Hormuz carries roughly 1/5 of the world's oil, but today it is nearly paralyzed. Shipping traffic has dropped by as much as 97%. At least 21 vessels have been attacked or have reported incidents since March 1st. 8 seafarers have been killed, and thousands more are stuck in the region. The strike happened in this context, but these were not ordinary bombs. The U.S. reached for something specific. It used the GBU-72 Advanced Penetrator. It weighs 5,000 pounds, or roughly over 2,200 kilograms. This is what is known as a bunker buster, a bomb built not to explode on impact, but to go deeper. It uses a hardened steel casing. This allows it to punch through layers of earth and reinforced concrete. Only after reaching depth does it detonate. The explosion happens underground, maximizing damage to hidden targets. These include missile silos, command centers, and storage facilities. Each of these bombs costs an estimated $288,000, and they are guided using GPS systems. That means precision, not just power. But this is not the first time bunker busters have been used in this war. Last year, Washington deployed a much larger version, the GBU-57 Massive Ordnance Penetrator. That bomb weighs around 30,000 pounds, or over 13,000 kilograms. It is 6 times heavier than the GBU-72 and was used to strike deep underground Iranian nuclear facilities like Fordo and Natanz. So the difference matters. The GBU-57 is built for extreme depth, for targets buried far below the surface, like in the mountains. The GBU-72 is smaller, more flexible, and better suited for hardened but shallower targets. In simple terms, the earlier strike was about brute force. This one is about precision. But the story goes far beyond just these 2 bombs. Bunker busters have been around for decades. They were first developed during World War II. This is when underground bunkers became harder to destroy. Today, they are central to modern warfare because battlefields have changed and targets are no longer always visible. They are hidden, buried as well as protected, and that has changed the weapons used to strike them. The war in West Asia is now reflecting that shift. It is becoming a testing ground for advanced weapons, from drones and missiles to precision-guided penetrator bombs. Each strike is not just tactical. It is a demonstration of capability, reach, and intent.
The future of this war depends on Donald Trump. I know it's not an encouraging situation, but unfortunately, it's the truth. Trump's next moves could shape the outcome of this war. So what are his options? Well, there are broadly 4 options. The first is to continue and expand the air campaign. We've seen indications of that. Today, Iran's largest gas field was hit, and yesterday the US deployed heavy bunker buster bombs. So the air campaign is intensifying. The problem is it does not guarantee success. You can destroy all the missiles you want, you can burn all the gas fields you want, but that may not topple Iran's regime. And even if the regime is toppled, do not expect a peaceful transition. You may get a fractured, vengeful Iran. Even American allies understand this.
Yesterday, I spoke about the fact that one cannot expect such a military strike to lead to an orderly change of regime. Those were my words. I would like to repeat that here and state it clearly.
Any expert will tell you this. Airstrikes alone cannot topple a regime. They only trigger chaos. Which brings us to option number 2, boots on the ground. Basically deploy American soldiers to capture Iranian power centers. We saw this happen in Iraq and Afghanistan. US soldiers managed to occupy those countries, but Iran is a whole different ballgame. For starters, it's much bigger than Iraq or Afghanistan. Plus, you have limited entry points. A large-scale invasion will have to happen across the border. You can either cross over from Iraq or you can cross over from Turkey, and both these points are rugged and mountainous, not to mention Iran will be waiting. They have more than 600,000 soldiers in their army, the Iranians. Most of their ground assets and artillery are still intact, so a full ground invasion will be a bloodbath. And yet, Donald Trump has not ruled it out.
The Iranian regime has told Sky News, if you put boots on the ground in Iran, it will be another Vietnam. Are you afraid of that?
No, I'm really not afraid of anything.
Next is option number 3, military off-ramps. There are several ideas floating around. One proposal is that US soldiers can extract Iran's enriched uranium, basically a targeted operation. Commandos swoop in, they secure the uranium and they leave. Needless to say, it's high risk. Another proposal is that America could capture Iran's strategic islands, like the Kurg Island. This island processes nearly 90% of Iran's crude. 90%. If the Americans capture it, they could use it as a bargaining chip. Again, it's a high-risk operation. But we are seeing some moves in this direction. As we speak, an amphibious US warship is sailing towards West Asia, the USS Tripoli. These ships are designed for an amphibious attack. They basically land soldiers and vehicles on enemy territory. Reports say Trump likes the idea of taking the Kurg Island. He feels it could knock out the Iranian economy. One of his key allies, Senator Lindsey Graham, has openly backed the plan. Look at his social media message. And I'm quoting, "He who controls Kurg Island controls the destiny of this war." Which brings us to the final possibility, good old diplomacy. Iran has rejected any talks with the US, but Trump says he's in touch with the regime. As things stand, bilateral talks would be very surprising because Iran has zero trust in the United States. They will want neutral mediators and concrete guarantees. Russia has offered to play that role. President Vladimir Putin reportedly proposed a plan to Trump. He suggested moving Iran's enriched uranium to Russia. Trump has rejected the plan. As war fatigue grips, diplomacy stock will rise. Trump is under pressure at home to wrap up the attacks. His allies abroad are also calling for diplomacy, so endless fighting is not an option. For most leaders, this would be a worrying conundrum. You start a war, but you can't end it. But Donald Trump is not like most leaders. He could just wake up one day, claim victory, and wrap it up. After all, his goals are extremely vague. We could see any of these possibilities play out in the coming weeks. As things stand, this is an aerial war. It's all about missiles and interceptors. But if Iran runs out of missiles or the other side runs out of interceptors, then the equation will change. We could be looking at a new phase of this conflict. Our next story is about Ukraine. It is still at war with Russia, but it's entered the battlefield in West Asia too. Tonight, we'll tell you why. What is Ukraine doing in the West Asia war and why is this important? When this war began, the world's attention shifted. Ukraine was no longer the top headline. Plus, oil prices shot up and oil supplies were hit. The US was forced to ease sanctions on Russia and Russian oil is flowing into the market. All of this is bad news for Kiev. Russia's revenue is growing and the pressure to end the war is eroding. Plus, there's a military angle. Western air defense systems are being redirected to West Asia. Systems like the THAAD and Patriot missiles. These are systems that Ukraine needs, but now they're heading elsewhere. Also, peace talks have slowed down. These are talks involving Washington, Kiev, and Moscow. There is no clear timeline for the next round. So Ukraine had to do something to get the world's attention back. And that's exactly what they did. They're offering something that their allies need: battlefield expertise. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky confirmed this yesterday. He said more than 200 Ukrainian experts are in West Asia. They're deployed in countries like the UAE, Qatar, and Saudi Arabia. These are countries facing regular attacks from Iran, and the Ukrainians are helping them in defense.
There are 201 Ukrainians in the Middle East and Gulf region, and another 34 are ready to deploy. We do not want this terror of the Iranian regime against its neighbors to succeed. And I sent these military experts at the request of our partners, including the United States.
So what expertise is Ukraine providing? Defense against Iran's drones, especially the Shahid drone. As you may know, the Shahid is a low-cost attack drone. It is easy to produce, and Iran is using it in large numbers to attack Gulf countries. Earlier, Iran supplied these same Shahid drones to Russia. For the past 4 years, Russia has used the same drones against Ukraine. So Ukraine has experience in intercepting these drones. It has been dealing with them almost every single day for more than 4 years now. And this experience can be invaluable in a war. Ukraine has developed ways to counter these drones. It has developed its own low-cost interceptor drones. One of them is called the Sting. It can track and destroy the enemy drones mid-air. Let me pull up some numbers for you. A Shahid drone costs anywhere between $20,000 to $50,000. Ukraine's interceptor drones cost far less, as little as $1,000 to $2,000. So for the Gulf states under Iranian attacks, this is not just useful, it's also cost-effective. Right now, they're using very expensive systems to stop cheap drones. A single Patriot missile can cost millions of dollars, while the drone, the Iranian drone it shoots down, may cost just a few $1,000s. This is not sustainable in a war which is well into its third week. And that is where Ukraine's model comes in. Low-cost defense for low-cost threats. Kiev says it can produce up to 2,000 such drones at once.
We are capable of producing at least 2,000 effective and combat-proven interceptors every day. We can produce more. It depends on investment. We need about 1,000 interceptors a day, and we can supply at least another 1,000 a day to our allies.
So this is not just support, it is a strategic offer. Of course, Ukraine is not doing this for free. They want something in return. They want advanced air defense systems, especially the Patriot missiles. These are the same systems that the US has deployed against Iran. Ukraine desperately needs them to defend its cities. So that's the offer. Drones for missiles. And it tells you something important about modern wars. You fight not just for territory, but also for visibility. Ukraine's survival depends on it. It cannot afford to fade into the background. The war has sent air tickets through the roof, but there's some relief for Indian flyers. The Indian regulator has introduced new rules. They're related to flight bookings. When you choose your seat on a flight, you are often charged extra. This is hidden cost that the airline extracts from you. Now the Indian regulator wants it to go. It says at least 60% of seats must be free for you to choose. 60% seats on every flight must be free. So airlines cannot charge you extra for picking a seat, and there won't be a second bill after you pay for your ticket. This is a welcome change for passengers, of course, but it's another blow to airlines which are already grappling with the consequences of the war. Here's a report.
You booked your flight, you paid for it, and then the airline charged you again just to sit down. That is not a hypothetical. That has been the reality for millions of Indian air passengers. Airlines have long divided their cabins by price. Window seat, pay extra. Aisle seat, pay extra. Extra legroom, pay even more. The free seats, the ones that cost you nothing, were always the ones nobody wanted. Middle rows, last rows, and seats scattered across the cabin. Now, India's aviation regulator has stepped in. A new directive has been issued. At least 60% of seats on every flight must be available at no additional charge. That is a fundamental shift. It means the majority of seats, not a token few, must be accessible without a surcharge. Passengers will have more choices, without having to open their wallets a second time. And the changes do not stop there. If you are traveling in a group, family, colleagues, a sports team, this is for you. Airlines have been instructed to seat everyone booked under the same reference number together, preferably in adjacent seats. That sounds obvious, but it has been a persistent source of frustration for years. The regulator has also taken aim at another gray area: sports equipment, musical instruments, and pets. Rules and charges for these has been inconsistent across carriers. That is now expected to change. Airlines have been asked to publish clear, transparent policies, so passengers know what to expect before they get to the airport. These reforms arrive at a particularly difficult moment for Indian aviation. The conflict in West Asia has turned the skies over one of the world's busiest air corridors into a no-fly zone. Union Civil Aviation Minister K. Ramohan Naidu confirmed the scale of the disruption in Parliament on Monday. Over 5,500 flights have been called so far due to the conflict. Gulf routes are the backbone of India's international aviation network. They connect tens of millions of passengers annually. Workers, families, tourists. With those routes disrupted, aircraft are grounded or rerouted. Utilization has dropped sharply. And when planes fly less, costs do not go down, they go up. Jet fuel, already the single largest cost for any airline, has surged. In India, prices have risen by approximately $50 per kiloliter since January. They now stand at around $150 per kiloliter. Aircraft operating Gulf routes are also being hit with war risk insurance premiums, an additional cost that did not exist 3 weeks ago. Indian carriers have responded. Air India, Indigo, and Akasa Air have all introduced fuel surcharges. That means passengers will pay more, on top of whatever the base fare already costs. The pressure is not unique to India. Delta Airlines says the fuel spike has added as much as $400 million to his airline's costs in March alone. American Airlines has flagged an identical figure for the first quarter. In Scandinavia, SAS, the region's largest carrier, has begun cutting flights. The war is now in its third week. Most West Asian airspace remains closed. The industry is rerouting, rescheduling, and repricing all at once. So Indian aviation is caught between two forces pulling in opposite directions. On one side, a regulator pushing for passenger-friendly reforms. On the other, a geopolitical crisis driving up every operating expense airlines face. The reforms are welcome. But whether airlines can absorb the conflict's costs without passing them on to passengers, that is the harder question. And right now, there is no easy answer.
Our next story is about North Korea. This week, they held a parliamentary election. Yes, North Korea likes to think of itself as a democracy, so they had an election. And guess who won? Kim Jong-un. It's a no-brainer. His party won by 99.93% of the votes. 99.93%, but that's not the number the world is talking about. They're wondering about the remaining 0.07%. The people who did not vote for Kim. The world wants to know who these people are and whether they're fine or not. Here's a report.
What does an election look like when the result is already known? In North Korea, it looks almost perfect. Nearly every voter turns up. Nearly every vote says yes. And the outcome leaves almost no room for doubt. This week, North Korea held its parliamentary elections, and the result was striking. The ruling Workers' Party and its allies secured 99.93% of the vote. That is, the ruling party led by Kim Jong-un. The voter turnout was reported at 99.99%, and all 687 seats in the Supreme People's Assembly were won. In most countries, a result like this would raise alarms. In North Korea, it raises flags, the celebratory kind. But outside observers see it differently. Many describe these elections as symbolic, a way to show unity, not a contest of choice. Because in North Korea, there is usually only one candidate per seat. That candidate is pre-approved by the state. Voters can technically say no, but doing so is not secret, and its consequences are well known. Which makes the most interesting number in this election not 99.93, but 0.07%. That is the share of ballots cast against the candidates. A tiny number, but a significant one. Because reports say this is the first time since 1957 that any dissent has been officially acknowledged, and that has raised questions. Experts say the number is likely symbolic, a way to create the appearance of choice without changing the system itself. Still, the internet reacted in its own way. Memes flooded social media. Some joked about the brave 0.07%. Others wondered what might happen to them. Behind the humor, there is a serious story. This election was not just about numbers, it was about control. More than 70% of the deputies are reportedly new faces. It is a major reshuffle. Analysts say this allows Kim Jong-un to remove older power centers and replace them with loyal figures. Names close to him are rising. This includes his sister, Kim Yo-jong. The assembly will meet soon. It is expected to reaffirm Kim as the country's supreme leader. And it may revise the constitution, including how North Korea defines its relationship with the South. The last such election was held in 2019. This one comes at a time when North Korea is stepping up its missile tests. In recent days, Pyongyang has carried out multiple missile launches, sending a signal to both South Korea and the United States. So this vote is not happening in isolation. It comes alongside a more assertive military posture, and together they send a clear message to the world that the system is intact and the leadership is secure. North Korea does hold elections, but surprises are not part of that process.
It's a serious story, but it's also our joke of the day. Like we told you, Kim Jong-un has won the election in North Korea. I know it's shocking. Everyone saw that coming, including the ballot box. But this time, he won with 99.93% of the vote. So who are these brave, mysterious 0.07% people? Are they okay? Did they accidentally tick the wrong box? Or are they currently being politely invited for a chat? The internet had a lot to say about it. Now it's time for Vantage Shots, images that tell the story. Indian states turn into a winter wonderland as snow falls in Jammu and Kashmir and Himachal Pradesh. Baby monkey punch still draws huge crowds in Japan's Ichikawa Zoo, and the Empire State Building glows green for St. Patrick's Day. On this day in 1962, the Evian Accords brought an end to the brutal Algerian war between France and Algeria. After nearly 8 years of violence, negotiations led to a ceasefire. It also paved the way for Algeria's independence from France, ending more than a century of French colonial rule. We're leaving you on that note. Thank you for watching. We'll see you tomorrow.
The world doesn't fit in boxes, so why should your news? From battlefields to negotiation tables, from internet outrage to real-world injustice. The conversations everyone is having and the ones they're avoiding. It's the same show, but this new year, Firstpost America gets a new look. I'm Kerry Johnston, and this is Firstpost America.